A voice shouted from the guard post above. "Who are you, and what is your business here?" Marishka turned toward Agivar with a slow smile. Agivar recognized that expression immediately and looked horrified. "Oh, hell no! Do not do it! Do not do it, bro!" Marishka lifted her chin and called out in her most dramatic voice. "We are here to seek shelter." She paused on purpose, clearly enjoying herself despite the danger. Agivar covered part of his face with one hand, already suffering. "And our business is our own," Marishka finished with deep satisfaction. "You and your pop culture references need to stop," Agivar said in frustration. "We are being chased and you are still doing lines." Malvern quickly leaned forward before the guards could misunderstand them. "Jamart, is that you?" "It is Malvern. We were held back from Timberland, and that is why we arrived late." The guard above the gate shifted, then called down again. "And the folk with you?" "Travellers," Malvern answered. "They seek shelter, as she said earlier." He glanced back at Beorne with obvious concern, knowing the next part would be harder to explain. "And could you quicken it? The beast is close." The main gate did not open, but a smaller door beside it creaked inward. Several villagers stepped out with weapons in hand, and Jamart was among them. He approached cautiously, his eyes moving over the carriage and the strangers sitting on it. "Where did you find these people?" he began, but his voice faded when he saw Beorne. Beorne, still dusty from being dragged and far too huge to look harmless by accident, stared back at Jamart. Then, with the brightest and most innocent smile he could manage, he lifted one hand and waved like a child greeting a neighbour. The silence that followed was so heavy that even the horse seemed to regret stopping. Jamart approached the carriage with careful steps, his spear held low but ready. The lantern beside him trembled in the night breeze, casting uneven light over the strangers who had arrived with Malvern and Enel. His eyes moved first to Lorien, and his brow furrowed at once. The Sun Elf's graceful face, strange golden skin, and bright noble presence were unlike anything Jamart expected to find outside Ashbarrow's gate after dark. He looked less like a lost traveller and more like a statue from an old shrine that had suddenly learned how to ask for shelter. Then Jamart's gaze shifted to Marishka. Her cloak, pale features and sharp moon elf beauty made him pause again, as if he were trying to decide whether all elves looked so different from one another, or if the world had simply become stranger since breakfast. When he saw Agivar next, his confusion deepened. The drow's dark skin and white hair caught the lantern light in a way that made several guards whisper among themselves, though Jamart seemed more puzzled than terrified. He looked like a man who had heard old stories but had never expected those stories to climb out of the night, carrying rabbits. Then Beorne stepped down from the carriage. The mood changed instantly, as if someone had pulled all warmth out of the lantern light. Jamart's spear came up in one sharp movement, and the other guards reacted with him. Spears and short blades pointed toward Beorne in a nervous rush. A younger guard stumbled backward and nearly dropped his shield, while another made a warding sign across his chest so quickly that his fingers almost hit his own chin. Even the villagers watching from the gate drew in a collective breath. "Barbarian," Jamart said, his voice hardening. Beorne stopped with one foot on the ground and one still braced on the carriage step. He blinked at the sudden wall of weapons, then forced a gentle smile and waved like a child trying not to frighten a nervous dog. "Hello! I promise this is my friendly face." The guards did not relax. One of them whispered, "Frostjaw Raider," while another took a cautious step back and muttered, "He is huge." Beorne slowly lowered his hand, his smile twitching at the edges as he looked from one spear point to another. "Bro, why does everyone keep reacting like I'm about to eat them?" he asked, his voice caught between confusion and offence. Marishka leaned slightly toward him without taking her eyes off the guards. "Because you look like a walking village disaster. You are basically what happens when a tavern warning sign grows legs." "I am smiling," Beorne said, sounding genuinely wounded. "That might be making it worse," Marishka replied. Jamart tightened his grip on his spear and turned a sharp look toward the driver's bench. "Malvern, why did you bring a northern brute to our gate?" Malvern raised both hands quickly, the reins still looped awkwardly between his fingers. "He stopped the carriage when I panicked. He could have broken me in half if he wanted to, Jamart, but he did not. I do not know what he is, but he is not acting like the raiders from the stories. Beorne pointed at Malvern with relief. Thank you. See, he understands that I am only accidentally terrifying. Enel spoke next, her voice softer than Malvern's but firm enough to carry. He also saved the golden elf from being trampled. If he wanted to harm us, he had more than one chance before we reached the gate. Lorien lifted one finger with wounded dignity. Thrown! I was thrown. Marishka glanced at him. You were saved. I was saved aggressively, Lorien correcting at his sleeves as if the grass stains had personally insulted his noble bloodline. Jamart did not lower his spear. His eyes stayed fixed on Beorne's axe, and old fear sat heavily in his expression. The last time men from the northern tribes came near Ashbarrow, 3 barns burned and 6 families were robbed before sunrise. I will not let that happen again, because a stranger smiles at the gate. Beorne's smile slowly faded. For the first time since he stepped down, he looked less confused and more uncomfortable. The jokes left his face, and beneath the dirt, bruises and massive frame, he looked like someone who had just realised he was wearing the shape of a nightmare from someone else's childhood. I did not do that, Beorne said, his voice lower than before. I know I look like someone who could, and I know this body does not exactly scream harmless traveller, but I am not here to hurt your village. Jamart hesitated. The honesty in Beorne's voice did more than his awkward smile had. The guards still looked afraid, but their fear shifted. It was no longer certain, only uncertain, and that small difference held the gate in silence. Before anyone could decide what to do, the horse screamed. Agivar spun toward the road first. From beyond the carriage, the beast came out of the darkness like a thrown shadow. It leaped from the tall grass with jaws wide and claws tearing through the dirt. Its body stretched impossibly long in the torchlight, all lean muscle, dark hide, and pale, hungry eyes. One guard shouted, another stumbled backward, and Jamart turned too late. The beast struck the nearest guard and slammed him to the ground. Chaos erupted. The horse reared against the reins, nearly twisting the carriage sideways. Enel screamed as Malvern grabbed her and pulled her back from the edge. The villagers scattered toward the smaller gate door, raising spears but too frightened to charge. Lanterns swung wildly, casting broken flashes of light across the road as the beast crouched over the fallen guard, its claws scraping against his shield. Beorne moved first, not because he knew what he was doing, not because he had a plan. His body simply moved before his thoughts could catch up. A wild heat surged through his chest, burning through fear, confusion, and the awkward shame of being mistaken for a raider. His grip tightened around his axe. His heartbeat slammed in his ears like war drums, and for one clear moment the world narrowed into 3 simple truths. Enemy. Protect. Strike. Agivar! Beorne shouted, his voice carrying across the road. Cover me! Agivar's body moved before Jojo could question it. He leaped from the carriage railing, landed hard on the road, rolled once and came up with his bow already drawn. He did not remember deciding to nock an arrow, but one was already resting against the string. His breathing slowed. The panic in his mind sharpened into a narrow line, and the shaking lantern light no longer felt random. It became distance, movement, timing. The beast turned toward Beorne. Beorne charged. His roar shook the road, and for a second even the guards forgot to breathe. The beast lunged low, claws slashing toward his leg. Beorne swung his axe too early, the blade cutting empty air by a hand's width. The weight of the weapon dragged his momentum sideways, and he almost spun himself off balance. "Whoa!" Beorne shouted, stumbling but somehow staying upright. "I am not used to this thing yet." The beast snapped at him. An arrow struck its shoulder. The creature screamed and twisted away, black blood spraying in the lantern light. Agivar stared at the bow in his hands with wide eyes, as if the weapon had done something impressive without asking him first. "I hit it!" Marishka leaned over the carriage railing and shouted, "Do it again!" "I am trying to understand how I did it the first time!" Agivar shouted back. The beast ripped the arrow loose with a violent shake and bounded toward him. Agivar's eyes widened. "Oh no! That is a very personal reaction." His feet moved on their own. He stepped backward, turned, and slipped into a patch of darkness near the side of the road. He did not vanish completely, and it was not magic in the flashy sense, but his movement became so smooth and silent that the beast lost him for one precious second.